whenever you're ready. And the floor is yours, my friends. By the way, Reggie, I am at a at the office here, and we're going to start a training here for the certification for the NEM 3.0 batteries. So I'm going to be out. So once you're done, brother, just close it out, and then you know what I mean. You're good to go. You don't have to pass it back to me because we're going to be taking the certification here.
All righty, sounds great, JC. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, brother.
All right, let me just share my screen, guys, and we'll get started. Can I get a thumbs up, anyone, if you can see my screen? All right, cool. So I'm going to start off just by thanking all you guys for coming and spending some time with me here. I'm going to give you as much knowledge as I can about roofing. Hopefully it helps a lot of you guys out and keeps you from running into a few errors or mistakes along the way. So I'm going to talk a little bit about myself. I've been with in solar for about 7 years, with Powur for 6. I've been roofing for 30 years now. You know, it's crazy to think that I'm dating myself that much. Been in also real estate and mortgage for about 12 years. So I do got a lot of finance background and stuff like that. And why I'm with Powur, you know, I just love the environment, the people, all of you. It's just an amazing culture that we have, and I love it. And I'm doing this just for the future, for, you know, our kids, your kids, grandkids, everybody. So I'm just going to move forward here along the slides. And anytime you guys need any or want any questions answered, whatever, raise your hand, type it in the chat, and we'll jump through them as quickly as we can, or hold off to the end and we'll do, you know, some Q&A at the end. Okay, so what I'm going to go over today are just basic roof types. You know, what roofs work with solar, what roofs don't. I'm also going to go over just basic roof assessments, things that you guys can look at on a roof that'll tell you whether or not it's feasible for solar, you know, whether it's aged too much or things like that. Give you some basic roof knowledge, aside from just all the roof types, you know, some of the installation processes and stuff like that and what to expect. And then also we're going to be doing just Q&A at the end, just to go over everything that we went over. So a lot of you are very familiar with the roof types. I'm sure some of you have done the roof training and stuff like that. So the first thing, just going to move a couple of things around here because I can't see my whole screen. Give me a sec. Okay. Obviously, what we run into mostly are composition asphalt roofs. This is the #1 or our favorite roof to install on. It doesn't require much at all. Some of the manufacturers that we install here in California, and I'm sure it's pretty much throughout most of the country, are Owens Corning, CertainTeed, and GAF are the most popular. This is our standard asphalt here, and I'm hoping you guys can see my cursor, but our standard asphalt roof is here. It was just some basic upgrades down here. So you'll get into those
Sorry.
once.
Sorry, I cannot see. It says loading. I don't know if others can see.
No, it's black.
The screen's black?
Yeah, same here. Can't see anything.
Yeah,
Oh.
it says loading.
Give me 1 sec here. It's strange. Let me stop and start again here. Any better now?
No, sir.
Nothing, huh? Don't know if my reception here. Was it sharing originally?
Negative.
Nothing. Huh?
Reggie, you're sharing, but we only see a black screen.
How about now?
Is
Nothing.
it a PDF
Actually,
file you have, Reggie?
Oh, it's a Google. presentation.
Maybe you should try it in the browser.
Because what I could think of, Reggie, is if you're able to email it to me, I could share my screen, pull it up, and then you just tell me to click.
Okay. You're not seeing anything right now still?
Just a black screen for me.
Hmm. Let's try that. Where can I share it to you, Anthony?
I just put my email in the chat if you want to email it to me, and I'll pull it up right now.
All right. God, I was just getting on a roll too. I shared the Google Drive with you, see if that works.
Now, Reggie, are you able to give me access to be the host or co-host? I'll pull it up right now.
Let me check that. Give me a sec. Let me stop sharing this.
Or Jessica, I know JC, you're on a training. If you guys can make me host, I already pulled it up on my email.
How do I make you host? I've never done that before.
If you go to my screen, there should be like 3 dots. If you
Okay.
click on that, I should say there, make host or co-host. I know you're the co-host right now. So
I don't know if it's giving me that
allow you
option.
to give me
because-
access.
Yeah, it's not going to allow me.
No? Okay. Jessica or JC, I don't know if you guys could hear me. Let me give JC a quick call.
Hey, Reggie, if you go to share screen and allow multiple participants to share, that'll do it.
Go ahead and try that, Anthony, see if that works.
All right. Can you guys see my screen here?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me see. I'll click slideshow. You guys can see that here?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Reggie, just let me know when you want me to click
All right.
off of this if that works for you.
I think it's mine. I'm getting really slow. There we go. Okay. Yeah, you can click through if you want to the next slide.
Okay. You could see it, right, Reggie, and everybody else as well?
Yeah, I can see it.
All right,
Yeah,
perfect.
we can see it. We can see it.
All right, perfect. I'll mute myself.
Yeah, you can go down a couple slides if you'd like, where we left off. I kind of went over my experience and everything like that, but go ahead from there. Next slide. All right. Go back one. Okay. Yeah, so I was kind of going over the standard asphalt roofs. These here are upgrades. You can't see my screen. I mean, you won't be able to see my mouse, right? That's fine.
No,
Okay.
they won't be able to.
Yeah, okay. For some reason, I'm not centered here. Okay. So these are standard asphalt roofs. So I kind of went over these basically. These are 3 of the main manufacturers that you'll see most of the installers use. And just some samples of different colors and things like that. So if you can go to the next slide. So these are concrete tile roofs, and I put all 3 types that we normally run into here. They come in a standard and a lightweight. And it's important to know that a lightweight tile will require a compound, which we will go over the next few slides here. So the first one on the left at the bottom is a standard S tile. One in the center is called a W tile, and the one on the right, or the charcoal color one there, is a flat tile. And I put the picture on the right here just to kind of give us an idea of the difference between a concrete and a clay tile. One of the big giveaways that I use a lot, if you look on the edge pieces, there's little dots or holes inside the sides of them. And that will usually give you an idea that whether it's concrete or clay once you run into a terracotta roof color like that. One of the things that we do as a roofer when I go out with Powur customers is we provide samples for the customers a lot of times when we do clay tile to help them pick out what colors they want, what styles they want, and stuff like that. And that's pretty much it with the concrete tiles. If we can go to the next slide. So this here is some of the metal roofs that we do. And a lot of people get a little confused with metal roofs because there's some that we could install on and some that we can't. Below are the photos of the types that we can install on. These are called standing seam roofs. And the panels attach directly to the seams on there. If you see where the roof has the striations or the lines in it, they actually attach to there, so there's no penetrations made in the roof. These will require a custom quote. This is not something you can just send to Powur and expect to get something back in 24 hours or whatever the timeline is that they get them. So they do require a custom quote. So if we can go to the next slide. Okay, these are clay tile roofs in different styles. You can see they come in different shapes, different colors and stuff like that. One of the important thing with clay tiles is that we cannot install on a clay tile roof. So these will require what we call a tile, a comp inlay or a comp out is what they're called. And normally what that consists of is we remove the tile, we set it aside, we install new paper on it, install shingles underneath, put the PV on, and then come back and install the tile around it. And these are very delicate, number one. And then number two, installers will tear them up if they try to install them. And that's one of the reasons why Powur will require us to do a comp inlay. So we can go to the next slide. All right, and these are just some, I can't see the whole entire slide, but I'll make it work with what I can see. Give me a sec here. Okay, let's get rid of that. All right, that's better. So I kind of just wanted to run through just kind of what the scope of work is, what to expect when you are doing different types of roofs. So this here is a comp shingle roof, or asphalt shingle is what we call them. Whether we do a partial, we do a full, it doesn't, it's still the same scope of work, whether we do the entire roof or part of it. So basically what we do on our typical jobs, we'll remove most of the roof or all of the roof. We inspect wood, we install new synthetic underlayment, all new flashings, all new edge metals and everything. And we'll go over all the details of roof in another slide. A lot of times we do have to do roof wood replacement, and it just depends on what type of roof, how long it's been leaking, if there's been leaks and stuff like that. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, this here is a concrete tile roof. A similar scope of work as a composition roof, obviously just different material. Whether we do partial or the entire roof, we're going to remove the tiles. We usually set them aside, whether we're going to do a comp out or an entire relay, we call it. We inspect the wood. This also requires either a synthetic or a 40-pound underlayment. And once we change all the metals and do everything like that, metal flashings, whether we do a comp inlay, then we go back and reinstall the complete roof. Typical tile roof job will take, a day to remove it, 3 to 4 days to install it. And then the solar will come in either during or after the process. Next slide. And here's the clay tile roofs. And I wanted to spend a little more time on this one because a lot of you will run into or have run into giving a proposal, selling a job, and then later finding out that it needs a different roof work or more detailed roof work based on the type of roof that it is. All clay tile roofs will require a comp out or comp inlay. And the process is, we remove the tile on the roof. We install composition shingles throughout the areas where the arrays are going to be. We leave it with comp, and the solar crew will come out and install all the panels. And then after that, we come back and we kind of backfill around the panels. So if you take a look at the picture to the right, underneath there's actually no tile. The tile is placed around it. So we backfill it to make it look like there's tile underneath the panels, but really in reality, there's only comp shingles under there. So it's important to know when you have a tile roof that's clay or a lightweight tile, so you don't, gain or have to do change orders and things like that. Next slide. So here's a little difference between the two. And I'll just point out a few things. What they're made out of is not as important as what they look like. When you look at the two roofs, on the left, you can see there's a little channel in between the tiles. And that's a good giveaway to know that they're concrete tiles. There's actually a mold that's made with the channels where they interlock with each other. They're also usually a little thicker. And you can tell by looking at them. And if you look at the right, the clay tile, they're thinner, number one. Number two, they don't have an interlocking channel 90% of the time. Sometimes you will see them, but there's also the giveaway that I gave you earlier. If you can look at the ridge caps or the end pieces, you will determine whether or not they're concrete tiles based off of that. So it's important to know, like I said, because I've had a lot of customers call me after they've given bids and proposals to customers, and later on are calling me to find out what it costs to do a comp inlay and it gets pretty expensive. So just, a heads up on that. Next slide. So here's a couple things to look for when you run into these type of roofs, whether or not they're able to be installed on, and you can kind of get an age of the roof by what they look like. You'll see defects throughout different types of roofs. On the asphalt roof, what you got to look for is blistering, buckling, curling, a lot of moss on the shingles, granules, and things like that are missing. Next slide. Okay, and then on concrete tiles, a lot of times what you'll see is broken tiles, cracked tiles, things like that. When there's evidence of that, it's important to look at what's underneath the tile. When you see the black areas that are exposed here, in between the cracked tiles, a lot of times the sun will damage that. And it's not just about replacing tiles. You got to actually go in and replace the underlayment once it's damaged also. So it's important to look at that. Next slide. All right, and here's just some, brief parts of the roof, because a lot of times you'll get some of the, your PMs or whoever, roofing department, telling you that certain things need to be fixed. So I just wanted to put this out there so you guys can take a screenshot, and it'll break down each part of the roof. And you have your valleys, you have your fascia boards that you'll hear a lot. When you hear facets, you'll see it's one entire side of the roof. And unfortunately, I can't show you my mouse, but so each section of the roof, each different side of it is considered a facet, and there'll be certain arrays in certain areas. So when you do a partial, you'll only have to redo certain facets of the roof. But we have our hips, there's drip edge on the bottom edges. Those are most of the terms that you're probably going to hear, other than, flat roof, pitch roof, things like that. Next slide. So here's a little list I made of things to look for when you're taking photos or whatever with your customers. On an asphalt roof, you got to make sure granules are fully present, that there's no spots or areas missing. Like the picture to the left, you can see there's white streaks in it. You'll get white streaks and black streaks a lot based on what the shingles look like. There's no cracking, splitting, tears. The white streaks are the shiny fiberglass on the left. A bad roof would have missing shingles, different colors of roofing where you can see that there's been patches. Shingles are curling, blistering, like they are on the right picture there. those are just some of the items. And then if you're uncertain, you know, a good thing to look at is in the gutters. If there's granules in the gutters that, or on the floor around the property, that means that a lot of the granules are starting to come off the roof, and it's time probably to take a good closer look at the roof. You know, if you see any exposed nails, any flashings or anything that are bent or anything, wavy roof material. Another thing too, that a lot of the roofing companies that I'm noticing, and even Powur, sometimes when you get really steep roofs, it's important to look at that for adders and things like that. Next slide. So here's some stuff about tile. Give me a sec. Okay. So, you know, number one, like we mentioned earlier, no cracked, missing tiles. That just damages the underlayment. So it's important to look at that. Some tiles are brittle, unable to walk on. Usually that's, you know, if it's considered lightweight or things like that, and you'll know that you'll need to do a comp out. Evidence of mold. And same thing, if you're uncertain, you know, you can always go get a roof check or have Powur do a roof check on tiles. Sometimes it's hard to tell whether or not you could actually, if the underlayment's bad or not. So it's good to get a roof check sometimes. Next slide. Okay, so here's just a roof assessment on a metal roof or stone coated roof. On the top right, you see that stone coated. Those have a tendency to dent a lot when people are walking on them. So you can see the seams are open there. And also you can see the dents, and that it's just not a smooth looking roof. The bottom right corner will show fasteners that are exposed. So if you ever see fasteners or any of the sealant that's cracked like that, that's a good sign that probably you're going to have to do some roof work. And then on the left, you'll see that there's some rust and things like that. So it's important to look at. Most of the metal roofs we work on will be either standing seam that will go directly over, or on the right, you'll see stone coated that we will have to do a comp out on. Next slide. Okay, and this is what I run into a lot with some of the roofs we run into, you know, the flat roofs, the membrane roofs, things like that. It's important, you know, if you look at some of these pictures, on the top left corner, you'll see there's some dark areas. Those are areas where some of the granules are missing. There's a seam that looks a little wider than others. It's an open seam. So those are some signs to look at. The one on the top right, we have some buckling in there, and you can see it's separating from the edge metal. The one in the center, you can see there's some dark spots on that gravel roof. So these are all just little areas or things to look at. Some ponding water on the right. Those are signs that, you know, it's probably you're probably gonna want a roofer to look at it. Anything, you know, you see any cracks in the sealant and stuff like that, those are also signs. Next slide. Okay, and then these are just some of the clay, and the one on the right is stone coated. And this is just another slide that I put together just so you can tell the difference, and you know that these are ones that will need a comp layout. You can go to the next slide. Okay, and these are some roofs that are disqualified that Powur doesn't even look at putting solar panels on. They'll have to do some kind of roof replacement or stuff like that. One of the centers is a slate roof. And you either have to remove the entire roof and redo it, or remove an entire facet and redo it. And we won't do an inlay with those. They'll just stay comp on that whole side of the roof. Wood roofing on the left, the wood shingles, wood shake, they won't allow us to install on those. And then on the right is it's like a synthetic fibrous roof material that if we were to put solar panels on, they kind of just crumble. So if you can put a screw in there, they'll just crumble. So if you ever run across any of these roofs, you're going to know that you need to do some kind of roofing, whether it's remove the entire roof or a section. Next slide. Okay. So one of the things that we run into a lot when we see stone coated roofs or wood shake roofs are skip sheeting. So if you can see on the picture on the right, it has solid decking on one side or skip sheeting on the right side. And what skip sheeting is, basically there's spaces in between the wood, and these were built ideally for old wood shake roofs. It made more sense and it's cost effective back in the 60s, 70s to install these roofs on space sheeting. So if you ever see space sheeting, and a lot of times you climb into the attic and you can see the pictures from the attic view, the one all the way to the right has skip sheeting. You can actually see through, and you'll see in between the little white areas is either black felt paper, or you will actually see the wood shingles through there. If you ever see that in an attic, you have to resheet the entire roof, which means put plywood on the entire roof. The one in the center is solid sheeting. You can see that there's plywood, there's no strips or anything like that. And then the one on the left is a combination of both. Sometimes you'll look into an attic, and if you see the picture that's on the left, you'll see that the portion on the right has wood above the slats or the skip sheeting. That means that it's been plywooded. So that's a good thing to look at. If it was an old house that maybe had wood shingles at one point and they installed plywood later, you'll be able to see the wood on top of the slats. So anytime we're doing comp or anything or any solar at all, they're going to require solid sheeting. So if you pop your head in the attic and you see any skip sheeting, know that there's going to be some roof work that's going to have to be done and some solid sheeting that's going to have to be put on there. Next slide. Okay. So one of the big things that we run into a lot as roofers for Powur is, when we get to the change order process, I always set or tell everyone to set proper expectations with your customer. Let them know that at one point when this roof comes off, there's probably going to be some wood that has to be replaced. Whether it's damaged, fascia board, eaves, plywood, or any other kind of wood. So it's good to let them know. And it's hard to tell how much is going to be replaced until we actually tear off the roof. There's a lot of stuff that we can't see. If we do a roof walk, or I like to do inspections before I start the job, and I'll take a look at the roof and I'll walk it and kind of just check around underneath eaves and things like that. And a lot of times I can tell that the roof's been leaking for a while, or I ask the customer, has the roof been leaking? Have you had any leaks? Which is an important question to ask your customers, during this whole process. How old is your roof? How long has it been up there? Obviously ask what type of roof it is, and ask if there's any leaks. Have they had any leaks recently? And that'll tell us whether or not what condition the wood may be in. The last thing we want to do, like I said earlier, is give a quote and then have to add 10,000, 15, 20,000 because anything in your roof. So set expectations for them once you do sell a roof that, there's going to probably be some changes, some change orders for wood and stuff like that. Next slide. And this is just a quick process of, the whole Powur process and how this works for us as a roofer and you guys. We usually get an email from Powur and it'll tell us, hey, give us a bid on this roof, or, schedule the roof, or whatever the scenario is. We usually will head out and drop off samples to the customer, kind of go through the whole, color, edge metal color, things like that. And that usually we do that in between the process of pulling permits and things like that. It's important to let your customers know that some, permits take a while sometimes in some cities. In the county of LA, here in California, I've had permits take 3, 4, 5 weeks just to pull a permit. And there's other areas that I go to where we can pull them in an hour, just walking in and taking care of all the permit paperwork, and they hand it to us over the counter. But it's important to let them know that that could be a process. Our roof tear off typically takes about a day. And it's good to let them know that we're going to need power, access to the driveway, just some minor things, just to let them know that, that we're going to need space to do some work. Our roof insulation, depending on the tile or a comp or whatever, usually takes anywhere from 1 to 4 days. And obviously we clean up and do our final inspection and stuff like that. Once we're done, your roof's ready for solar. You can go to the next slide, Anthony. That's pretty much what I got. I figured we'd do some Q&A for a little bit. If anyone has any questions or want me to go back to any of the slides.
Hey, Reggie, 2 questions. This is Nick Lee in Northern California.
Okay.
So is stone coated steel supported by Powur, or is that region specific?
As far as I know here, I'm in Southern California. It's the only place that I work. I mean, it's supported by Powur. We do comp inlays all the time.
Okay.
And it's important to know on stone coated, a lot of them, or 90% of them, don't have plywood underneath them either. They have
Right.
the skip sheeting. So that's important to make sure that you include that in your proposals all the time.
Okay.
You ran or heard of anywhere in certain areas where it's not supported.
I thought maybe it was a roofing partner decision, but okay, thank you. On the second question is the 10% overage included in a Powur quote enough in your mind?
Okay, I get that question all the time. It's so hard to tell. I mean, there's roofs where I go in and, all our wood and damage and everything is $150. And there's some that I go in there where it's, $3,000-$4,000.
Okay.
So it's really hard to tell. I would say 90% of the time that 10% does cover. And the big
Okay.
confusion that I'm getting now that things have changed a little bit is that, Powur used to bank in $50 per square for us so that's kind of a little confusing now. So I would definitely buffer for the roof in case there is anything that needs to be changed.
What do you think is a good estimate of a buffer?
I would do at least 10 to 15%.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Reggie.
Yeah.
Hey, quick question. You were talking about the skip sheathing. This is Greg Hardy, San Jose, California.
Uh-huh.
And the question I want to ask you about was when we see skip sheathing,
Mhm.
if they don't have, if it does have plywood on top of it, we're good, right?
Correct.
If it's all covered by plywood. Okay.
Yeah.
I was just making sure because I didn't know if we had to. Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
That's always how I did it.
Yeah, and
Okay.
it's pretty easy to tell once you look up in the attic or in the garage. And most properties, you'll see just all wood, no shingles, no tar paper, anything like that, no felt.
Gotcha. And one more question in regards to the ceramic tiles. The clay ones, we just stay away from them altogether. I mean, is there any way to install on that? The clay?
Not without doing a comp inlay. Powur won't allow it. So you can
Gotcha.
you can install on them. I do a ton of them in Southern California, where we do the picture frames or the comp inlays.
How much would you think that would increase the cost of the project on average?
I would say on average, it's about $750 a square. So normally, a square is 100 square feet of roofing.
Uh-huh.
So that's a good ballpark.
$750 a square. Okay, good deal. Thank you.
Reggie, I have a question.
Yeah.
So for the newer consultants that would like to request you for any Southern California jobs, where would they be able to request you?
They can do it through the Powur platform. They can put in their notes in there. Or number two, they can reach out to me. I give them a bid and then I can send that over to Powur.
Awesome, thank you. And for those who are wondering where in the Powur platform, if you go to your site info on the project, you go all the way to the bottom where it says project handoff notes. That's where you could request Reggie's company all in one.
And we cover most of Southern California, Orange County, LA, Riverside, San Bernardino counties. Any other questions?
Hi, Reggie. I am Mustafa from Chicago. Reggie, who pays for the inspection and how much should it be?
The inspection gets paid for through your customer will have to pay for an inspection. The Powur, it's something new that's going on with Powur. I've only been on a couple inspections that are requested by Powur. It's something new they're doing. I believe they're $225, if I'm remembering correctly, $225 to $300, somewhere in that ballpark.
300.
300, is that what it is? Make a note of that for me too.
I have a question. For like people who are doing the ODSS or site survey, they usually check condition of roof. How often do you are you sure that all roofs will pass when, let's say, during installation they lift the tiles and found out like the middle of the roof the paper underneath is flaky or powdery?
Mhm.
How often does it happen?
It's only happened to me one time. I don't think it's very often. Most of the installers, a lot of times on tile roofs, I like to have the installer do the site survey for that reason alone. I'll climb up on the roof and I'll check myself also, just, because Powur allows me to. So I don't run into it very often. And I get calls probably once a month asking me to go look at one for some of the local consultants because they're concerned about it or whatever their scenario is. But I don't think it happens very often. I think the on-demand site survey people are getting trained pretty well on that.
Per previous experience that I have with to install ODSS guys, they said like they only can go at the edge of the roof and check the condition of the paper underneath the concrete tile.
Right. They're not allowed to climb on the roof, so they'll usually move a couple tiles on the edge.
Okay, thank you.
And usually if it's damaged, I mean, on a tile roof, the paper is usually most damaged at the edge of the roof than it is in the center of the roof. Or if there's tiles missing, obviously there's damage there also.
Okay, thank you. Glad to know.
Reggie, I recently had a client last week ask me if there's a separate warranty on the roof, let's say shingle or concrete tile, like if you repaper it, aside from Powur's 30-year warranty. Do you know about that?
Yeah, most of the roofing companies will have a warranty based on whatever type of roof it is. They usually start at 10 years and go up from there.
That would be like a workmanship, right?
That'll be a workmanship warranty, yes.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything? I don't know if anyone's typed in the chat or not. Is there any questions there?
Someone seems to have asked, does it void the roof warranty installing solar?
No, I mean, not if we're doing the roof for Powur, no. There's one on here. It says, will the cost of comp out for, I guess they meant shake or clay tile, be included as adders? Yeah, so any proposal you get from Powur, you would definitely put that number in your adders if you're financing the project, for sure.
I have a question about clay tile. Is the only way that Powur does clay tile just is through doing a comp inlay, or is there any way that clay tiles are lifted, anchors are put down, and the tiles are put back down around the anchors?
From my understanding, Powur will not work on any clay tile without doing a comp inlay.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Reggie, so I know the answer to this, but can you explain to our newer consultants the process of doing a re-roof, like from permitting, obviously getting the roof first before installation? Like, what's the expectation on a re-roof?
As far as time goes, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, so I briefly covered that, but timelines for most of the cities or building departments here in California, we can usually get a permit over the counter, which happens in one day. Our normal removal of roof usually is about a day, 1 day process. And we have to get, inspections after that, which is day number 2. And day number 3 to 5 will be re-roof, depending on the type of roof. Most comp roofs take 1 to 2 days to install. Most tile roofs will take maybe 2 to 4 days, and metal roofs do take a little bit longer. And if you're ever re-roofing with a metal roof, it's important to know that the material ordering process takes about 4 to 6 weeks to get our metal in. So that's something that we got to prep for.
Reggie, one more question coming to my mind. Are there any best and the worst roof to work on, please?
For solar, I would say that most of the installers like composition roofs. It's the easiest roof to install on. as far as a roofing standpoint, what would last the longest. You know, most of the roofs will do 30, 40 years now. Most of the warranties on metal roofing is about 50 years. So it just depends. I mean, but I know the solar installers love comp shingles. That's what they prefer to install on.
Hey, Reggie, it's Hugh over in Tampa. Quick question on usually have you run into like roofs that have, say, several layers, like more than say 2 layers, and would that 15% would be a good factor, or you think best practice is ask the customer if they've had it like a roof over before? How do you address that?
So typically I will ask them how old the roof is, and I'm always hoping that they actually installed the roof at some point when they were in their house. But that's why I go out and do my inspections before I start a roof to figure out where we're at. Here in California, the max is 2 roofs. We do run into 3, 4, 5 roofs sometimes. And then I'll just disqualify it and say that, you know, everything needs to be removed and re-roofed. Some customers know if they've had a second roof put on their house, you know, if they've been there long enough.
Well, then I guess it's a one-off situation as far as the 15%, correct?
Yeah.
Because that's more waste you got to bring to the dump and more labor for the crew.
Yeah, that 15% is not going to cover a second, third, or layer either. So when we give a bid out to Powur, and I don't know if you guys do the same thing in Florida, but our first bid that they give us is always just 1 layer removal.
Okay.
And then after inspection, I'll let them know if there's 2 or 3 layers, and then I'll go from there.
That makes sense. All right, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions before we get off here? Well, I think that's it, guys. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen, and hopefully I taught you guys something. Sorry for the little mix-ups here on our screen and sharing and stuff like that. Made it a little more difficult for me because I couldn't point anything out on the screen, but I hope you guys took some notes and learned something. And if you guys ever have any questions, feel free to reach out. My number was on the screen a bit ago. And I'm more than happy to help any of you guys.
Reggie, we appreciate you. Thank you so much. Before you do log off, since you're co-host, can you just make sure you stop the recording so it could save?
Ooh, let me see if there we go.